You don't need to be like this. You know I'm with you.
Ayla hated galas, hated expensive dresses she couldn't afford, hated fake conversations about networking that were really just people showing off what they'd accomplished that year and making others jealous to feed their ego or whatever. But more than anything, she hated being humiliated. And tonight, at the grand ballroom at the plaza, surrounded by colleagues who pretended to be friends, it was the worst night of her life until it wasn't. Because Matteo Cipriani, the richest, most powerful, and most dangerous man in the room, decided to step in, calling her his wife, in front of everyone, leaving them all speechless. The problem he didn't want to stop. Chapter 1: Humiliation and Shocking Intervention. The phone vibrated in my hand as I stared at the simple black dress hanging on my closet door, and Kitty's name flashed on the screen as if she had some sixth sense for knowing when I was on the verge of a breakdown. I answered on the first ring because she was the only person in the world who really knew me. "I do not want to go, Kit," I said, before she could even say anything, and my voice came out more desperate than I intended. "Charity gala? It's more like a parade of inflated egos and purses that cost more than my car." Her laugh on the other end of the line was warm and comforting, as it always was, but it couldn't completely dissolve the knot growing in my stomach. "But June forced you, didn't he? That idiot boss of yours." "Yeah, he practically subpoenaed me." I rolled my eyes, even though I knew she couldn't see, walking over to the bed where I'd tossed the most presentable purse I owned. "Mandatory attendance? Dress well? Represent the company, blah blah blah." But my well is literally a dress from TJ Maxx from last year, while theirs is Chanel straight from the Paris runway. "Ayla Morris, you look beautiful in anything, and you know that perfectly well," Kitty shot back with that firmness of a nurse used to dealing with stubborn patients. "And if anyone dares talk bad about you, I'll leave this shift right now and go there to personally fight whoever it is." I laughed because it was impossible not to laugh when Kitty got into this extreme protective mode, but the laugh came out kind of choked. "You're on shift at the hospital and we both know you can't leave, but I'll call if I need to, I promise." There was a pause on the other end, and I could hear the background noise of the hospital, that unmistakable sound of machines beeping and people talking quietly. "Ayla, listen." Her voice got more serious, and I knew what was coming. "Watch out for Mabel, okay? She's a snake disguised as a friend, and you know that as well as I do." "I know perfectly well," I mumbled as I grabbed the dress and held it against my body, looking at myself in the foggy mirror of my tiny bedroom. "But she pretends to be a friend so well that sometimes even I convince myself it's real." "It's because she wants to use you, sweetheart." Kitty sighed heavily. "She sees that you're pretty, talented, and genuine, and that eats away at her inside because Mabel doesn't have anything genuine. Promise me you'll be careful." "I promise," I answered quietly, feeling that tightness in my chest that always came when I thought about how my professional life was a minefield of fakeness. "Now go save lives, nurse. I love you." "Love you too, and you're going to kill it tonight, even if it's just to prove you're better than all of them combined," she said, before hanging up. And I stood there in the middle of my too small apartment, holding a too cheap dress, getting ready for a night that promised to be a complete disaster. 2 hours later, I was at the Plaza Hotel, and the absurd ostentation of the place hit me like a punch to the stomach as soon as I walked through the giant doors. The main ballroom sparkled with crystal chandeliers that probably cost more than I'd make in a lifetime, and there were imported flowers everywhere, huge fragrant arrangements that screamed money in an almost offensive way. My simple black dress suddenly seemed even more inadequate, and I had to resist the urge to turn around and run. My colleagues were already there when I entered, all gathered in a group near the bar, and it was impossible not to notice how they seemed to belong to that place in a way I never would. The dresses were clearly designer, the jewelry was real and expensive, the makeup had been done by professionals, and even the way they held their champagne glasses seemed rehearsed and perfect. Mabel saw me first, and the smile she flashed was so fake I could almost taste the bitter lie in the air. "Ayla, so glad you came." She approached with calculated steps, her eyes running over my body from top to bottom in a way that made me feel exposed. "What a different dress. Is it vintage, or would it be thrift store actually?" "It's from last year," I answered, trying to keep my voice steady. "But I like it." One of the other colleagues, that platinum blonde, let out a shrill little laugh. "Last year, Mabel has a new dress every week. Imagine wearing the same thing twice. How awful. And those jewels? You're not wearing any?" Another approached, shaking her wrist full of bracelets. "Not even a cheap little necklace?" Something from Walmart at least? I swallowed hard, feeling the discomfort grow. I'm not really into jewelry. I prefer to keep things simple. Of course you do, Maybelle agreed with that tone of false sympathy. You've always preferred simplicity, right? It's even charming in a rustic kind of way. Like country chic, you know? That small town thing that some people can pull off. You almost pull it off. I felt the venom hidden in the words, but swallowed it all, because confronting Maybelle there would only make everything worse. I mumbled some excuse and walked away toward the bar, desperately needing something to do with my hands that were starting to shake. I was grabbing a glass of champagne when Jean appeared at my side, and I didn't need to look to know it was him because the smell of that expensive, nauseating cologne always preceded him. Ayla, you came. His voice had that tone of disappointed surprise. Like that. Excuse me? I turned to face him. His eyes wandered over my outfit, and he shook his head slightly. Nothing. I just expected more effort on your part. This is an elite event, Ayla, and appearance matters much more than you think. People judge, and you're giving a very simple image of our company. The humiliation burned in my chest. I understand perfectly, Mr. Dubois. Good. Great. He gave that condescending smile. Now circulate, network, show that you know how to behave in society. That's literally what you're here for. And then he walked away, leaving me alone, wanting to disappear. On the other side of the ballroom, in a more discreet area reserved for business conversations, Matteo Cipriani was in a meeting that should have had his full attention, but simply didn't. He had come to that gala out of pure social obligation, one of those events his position required attendance at, even though he'd rather be anywhere else in the world. He was discussing business details with two businessmen when his gaze caught movement on the other side of the ballroom, and then he saw her. At first, it was just a casual observation, the kind of thing that happens when you're bored at an event full of people. But then something clicked in his memory with surprising force. That woman, that brown hair falling loose over her shoulders, that delicate way of moving as if trying to occupy the smallest space possible in the world. He knew her from somewhere, and it took only a few seconds for the memory to crystallize completely in his mind. 3 weeks ago, on just another Monday morning, he had stopped at a cafe on the way to an important meeting. He was waiting for his espresso when he saw that same woman helping an elderly lady who was struggling to carry her heavy bags. The kindness with which she talked to the lady, the genuine smile, the patience in helping even though she was clearly late for work, all of that had caught his attention in a way few things did. In a world where everything was transaction and fakeness, that simple act of kindness had been refreshing and memorable enough to stick. And now there she was, wearing a dress that obviously wasn't designer but that fit her body well, without ostentatious jewelry, but with a natural beauty that most of the women in that ballroom couldn't achieve even with all the money in the world. But there was something wrong with the scene, something that made his instincts sharpen with predatory attention. Boss, are you listening to me? Kyle Torres's voice, his capo and right-hand man, cut through his thoughts. Matteo didn't take his eyes off the woman across the ballroom. Those women there, near the bar. Who are they? Kyle followed his gaze and narrowed his eyes, assessing the situation. Luxury marketing. Laurent Inc., if I'm not mistaken. Why the sudden curiosity? Because they're about to do something very stupid, Matteo murmured, watching the group form around the woman he now knew was named Ayla, and her body language screamed discomfort and imminent humiliation. And I don't tolerate gratuitous cruelty, especially not in public, and not against innocent people. Kyle knew that tone of voice, that tension in the boss's shoulders, and knew exactly what was coming. Where are we going, boss? To intervene, Matteo answered simply, already moving toward the group with determined steps. Meanwhile, I was trying to convince myself I could survive that night, when Maybelle's voice cut through the air again, loud and too clear not to be purposeful. My whole body froze because I recognized that tone, that calculated volume. Did you guys see her dress? Maybelle's voice echoed. Seriously, it looks like those country clothes we see at street fairs. TJ Maxx was generous. It must have been a church bazaar, really. The group erupted in laughter, and each sound pierced my skin. And the hair? Didn't even style it properly. Looks like she just came from a farm, literally. Another voice added with sharp cruelty. Zero effort. Zero class. Zero awareness of what it means to be at an event like this. She doesn't belong here at all, the platinum blonde agreed, shaking her head. It's like bringing someone from a swap meet to a gala. Embarrassing for all of us who have to pretend she's part of the team. Maybelle saw me then, and the smile she flashed was pure malice disguised as surprise. Ayla, we didn't see you standing there. What a scare. She made a dramatic pause. We were just commenting about diversity of styles. Yours is really unique, like that small-town girl aesthetic who comes to the big city but doesn't know how to dress yet. It's valid. Everyone at their own level, right? Very valid. It's almost folkloric, another completed laughing. The trees in the park must have loved this natural, rustic vibe. Tears burned in my eyes, and I was turning to get out of there as fast as possible when Mabel's voice fired the final blow. She's always been like this anyway, inadequate for our social circle. She's sweet when she wants to be, poor thing even, but she simply doesn't have the necessary refinement. It's not her fault. It's just that some people were born to be basic, and that's okay. The world needs simple people too. The entire group laughed with cruel approval, and I felt my heart shatter right there in the middle of that ostentatious ballroom. I was almost reaching the exit, wiping tears with the back of my hand and trying to breathe through the pain, when I felt the change in the air around me. It was as if a wave of pure energy had crossed the ballroom, and I heard the growing murmur of people moving away, making way for something or someone. The presence approaching was so dominant and charged with power that even with my back turned, I felt every cell in my body react with a shiver that had nothing to do with fear and everything to do with something much more dangerous and primitive. Matteo crossed the ballroom with the confidence of a predator who knows exactly how lethal he is, and people literally moved out of his way as if they were tides parting to let a king pass. Kyle followed a few steps behind, watching everything with that amused expression of someone who was about to witness something memorable. When he got close to the group of women who were still laughing at their own cruelty, the silence fell so fast it was almost violent. Mabel saw him first, and the color literally drained from her face, because everyone in that ballroom knew exactly who Matteo Cipriani was, and what he represented in terms of power and danger. But he didn't even look at them yet. His dark and intense eyes were fixed on me, on my figure standing with my back turned, trying to control the tears that insisted on falling. The voice that came from his mouth was husky, wrapped in a subtle Italian accent, and each word seemed loaded with some meaning I still couldn't decipher. Amore mio, I looked for you everywhere. I turned so fast I almost tripped, and what I saw made me completely forget how to breathe. The man in front of me was simply the most beautiful and dangerous being I had ever laid eyes on, with a presence that sucked all the oxygen from the surrounding space. Dark eyes so intense they seemed capable of seeing through my soul, black hair perfectly slicked back, a jawline defined like classical sculpture, and a suit that probably cost more than 6 months of my salary. "Excuse me?" The word came out weak and confused. He took my hand with a delicacy that completely contrasted with the almost violent intensity of his gaze, and then brought it to his lips and kissed the back with reverence that made me tremble. His eyes didn't leave mine for a single second. "You disappeared and I got worried, my love." And then he turned to the group, and the gentle man from seconds ago completely disappeared, replaced by something cold and dangerous. The voice came out low, but sharp as a blade. "And you are exactly who? The people who were bothering my wife?" The silence that fell over the ballroom was so absolute, I could hear my own heart racing in my chest. My mouth fell open in shock because he had just called me his wife in front of hundreds of people, and I had no idea who he was or why he was doing this. Mabel went white as a sheet. "Wife?" Her voice came out trembling. "Matteo Cipriani has a wife. Since when?" His arm wrapped around my waist in such a possessive way that my whole body reacted with an electric shiver, and he pulled me closer while looking at Mabel with an expression that managed to be polite and terrifying at the same time. "Yes, Ayla is my wife. Always has been," he confirmed, and then tilted his head slightly. "And you are?" Mabel Laurent, sir." She was visibly shaking. "I didn't know. We had no idea she was married to you. Please accept my most sincere apologies. We were just joking." "Joking?" The word came from him like a verbal whip. Interesting definition for systematic public humiliation and deliberate cruelty. He took a step forward and the entire group backed up as if facing a wild animal. "You called her country, basic, inadequate, laughed at her for not having expensive jewelry, for wearing a dress that's not designer, for simply existing in a space you considered exclusively yours." The platinum blonde was almost crying. "Mr. Cipriani, we would never have done this if you knew who she was." He completed with a smile that had nothing warm about it. "So, your cruelty is conditional on the perceived importance of the victim. That somehow makes everything worse, not better." The pause he made was loaded with silent threat. "Let me be extremely clear about something. You just publicly humiliated my wife, and that constitutes a very, very serious mistake that will have consequences." Another colleague was shaking so much the glass fell from her hand. "Please, sir, we're so sorry." Matteo turned to me then, and all that lethal coldness melted into genuine concern that left me even more confused. The voice came out soft and careful. "Amore, are you okay? Did they hurt you?" I was so shocked I could barely process what was happening, but there was something in his eyes, something real beneath all that intimidating performance. Not physically, but," he nodded once. decisive, and then looked back at the group with a final expression. "Get out of here now, all of you, and if I hear a single word about my wife coming out of your mouths again, you won't want to find out what the consequences are. I don't make empty threats, and all of you know that very well. So move before I change my mind about letting you leave so easily." The group practically ran away, stumbling in their high heels, and I noticed the entire ballroom was watching us in absolute silence. When we were finally alone, or as alone as you can be being the center of attention of hundreds of people, I moved away from him and faced him with all the indignation and confusion I could muster. "What did you just do?" My voice came out louder than I intended. "We don't even know each other. Why did you call me your wife?" He smiled, and it was the kind of smile that should come with a danger warning, beautiful and lethal simultaneously. "I saved you from a public humiliation that was about to get even worse. And while I was at it, I saved my own reputation because nobody humiliates what's mine without suffering severe consequences." "But I'm not yours," I almost shouted. "We've literally never met before. We haven't gotten to know each other properly yet, that's true," he agreed with that irritating calm, and then moved half a step closer, making my heart race. "But I've seen you before, Ayla. 3 weeks ago, at a cafe. You were wearing a blue dress, had your hair up, and stopped to help an elderly lady carry her bags. You talked to her, smiled with a genuine kindness that's rare to see in my world." My jaw dropped because I vaguely remembered that day, that lady who was struggling at the cafe door. "You remember that?" "I remember everything about you since that moment," he answered with intensity that made my breath fail. "And when I saw you here today being attacked by those venomous snakes, I simply couldn't not intervene. I called you my wife because it was the only thing that occurred to me that would make them all stop immediately." He offered his arm. "And now everyone in this ballroom, including you eventually, believes we're married. So come, let's dance and put on a proper show for all this curious audience." I should have refused, should have demanded explanations, but there was something magnetic about this man that pulled me like a force of nature. "You're insane." "Completely," he agreed, guiding me to the dance floor, and when his hand landed firmly on my waist, I felt an electric shock. "But you're fascinated, Amore. You can admit it." My heart was beating so hard I was sure he could hear it. Maybe. The husky laugh that escaped him did something in my stomach contract in a completely new way. "Good. Very good, because I never let go of what's mine, Ayla Morris, and now you're mine, even if you haven't fully realized it yet. But you will, my love. You will very soon." Chapter 2. Dance and Explanations. The dance floor was packed with couples spinning elegantly to the sound of a classical waltz, but I was absolutely certain that every eye in the ballroom was fixed on the two of us, and not the other dancers. Mateo's hand was firm on my waist, large and warm enough for me to feel it through the thin fabric of the dress, and he kept me so close I could feel the heat emanating from his body, like a wave that enveloped me completely. "Relax. You're too tense," he murmured near my ear, his husky voice doing something strange to my ability to breathe normally. I tried to move away a few inches, but he kept me exactly where I was, and the whisper that came from my mouth was loaded with pure anxiety. "It's because literally everyone is staring at us, and you called me your wife in front of hundreds of people without any kind of warning. Why did you do that?" He spun me gently, following the music, and the movement was so natural, my body simply followed his without thinking. "Because you were being humiliated in a cruel and public way, and I simply can't tolerate that kind of gratuitous cruelty." He paused, and his dark eyes trapped me with an intensity that made my stomach contract. "And because I saw you before, Ayla, in a moment you have no idea you were being observed." My heart skipped a beat, and I blinked confused. "Before? When? Where?" 3 weeks ago, at a cafe downtown," he answered with that soft voice that completely contrasted with his dominant presence. "You were wearing a light blue dress, had your hair up in a kind of messy bun, and were carrying a huge bag that seemed to weigh more than you did." The small smile that curved his lips was genuine. "You stopped to help an elderly lady who was struggling with heavy bags at the entrance, talked to her for several minutes, asked if she needed a ride, offered your phone number in case she needed help again." I vaguely remembered that day, that sweet lady who had gone to the market and bought more than she could carry, but I never imagined anyone had paid attention to that. "You were there?" "I was waiting for my espresso and watching," he confirmed, pulling me imperceptibly closer. "And I was fascinated because in a world where everything is calculated transaction and disguised self-interest, you were genuinely kind, without expecting absolutely anything in return." His fingers squeezed my waist lightly. "You were real, Ayla, in a way people simply aren't in my world, and I couldn't forget." My heart was beating so hard I was afraid he could hear it, and my voice came out weaker than I intended. So what was this? A spur-of-the-moment impulse because you remembered me? It was strategy and desire mixed into a decision I made in approximately 3 seconds, he answered with brutal honesty. Strategy because calling you my wife was the only thing I knew would make those women stop immediately and respect you. He stopped dancing completely, keeping me trapped in the circle of his arms, and looked at me with an intensity that stole the air from my lungs. And desire because now everyone in this ballroom, including you eventually, knows you're mine, and no one will dare touch you or hurt you again. I should be angry, should be outraged at the absurd presumption, but all I could feel was that dangerous fascination growing. But I'm not yours. We literally just met for real. Not yet, he agreed with that small, dangerous smile. But you will be, Amore, because I don't do this. He gestured vaguely at the ballroom around us. I've never publicly pretended, never lied about something so serious, never put my reputation on the line for anyone. His fingers moved up and touched my chin delicately, tilting my face so I couldn't look away. But for you, I did all of that without thinking twice, and now that I have, I'm going to make this lie become the most real truth of my life. The declaration should sound absurd, should make me laugh at the arrogance, but it came out with so much conviction. I felt each word lodge somewhere deep inside me. You're presumptuous, arrogant, and you're assuming things you have no right to assume. And you're fascinated by me. You can admit it. He shot back with that smile that did impossible things to my self-control. I see it in the way your breathing speeds up when I get close, in the way you tremble when I touch you, in the way your eyes dilate when I talk to you. My face got so hot, I was sure I was red as a tomato, and I moved away trying to regain some control of the situation. I admit absolutely nothing. The husky laugh that escaped him was low and too intimate for such a public place. Adorable liar, he murmured, taking my hand and intertwining our fingers in a way that felt surprisingly natural. Come on, let's get out of here before you pass out from staring at me so much and trying to pretend you're not. I wasn't staring at you that much, I protested as he gently pulled me toward the exit, but the lie was so obvious even I didn't believe it. He just smiled over his shoulder as we crossed the ballroom, and I noticed how people literally moved aside, creating a clear path for us, as if his mere presence commanded respect and even fear. It was intimidating and fascinating at the same time to see the power he wielded without even needing to say a word. When we got outside the plaza, a shiny black limousine was waiting right at the main entrance, and my eyes must have widened because Matteo let out that low laugh again. "You have a limousine?" The question came out higher pitched than I intended. A tall, dangerous-looking man with amused eyes opened the back door and looked at me with a smile that bordered on sarcastic. "The boss always has a limo, and a private driver, and bodyguards, and basically everything money and power can buy." He extended his hand to me. "Kyle Torres, capo and right-hand man, an official witness to all this craziness that just happened in there." Matteo rolled his eyes in a surprisingly normal way for someone so intimidating. "Kyle, focus on work." "Yes, boss," Kyle agreed, but not before leaning in and whispering loud enough for me to hear. "Just so you know, he never does this. Never. You're special in a way I've never seen anyone be to him." I got into the limousine trying to process that information, and the interior was so luxurious it seemed straight out of a movie, with soft leather seats, gentle lighting, and even a small built-in refrigerator with chilled champagne. Matteo got in right behind me and settled too close, his thigh touching mine in a way that made my skin tingle through the fabric. "Where do you live?" The question came accompanied by that penetrating gaze that seemed capable of reading every thought passing through my head. "Why do you want to know?" I shot back, trying to maintain some control of the situation, even though I felt like I was rapidly losing it. "Because I'm taking you home safely," he answered, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. "And because tomorrow we need to talk for real, without an audience, without performance, just the two of us being honest about what happened and what's going to happen from now on." My stomach twisted in a strange knot that was part anxiety and part anticipation. "Talk about what exactly?" He leaned closer, and I smelled the expensive cologne he wore, something woody and masculine that made my head spin slightly. "About how we're going to make this work, Amore," he murmured with that voice that seemed to caress each word. "You're now my wife in the eyes of everyone who was in that ballroom, and news like that spreads fast in our social circle." His fingers played with a strand of my hair that had escaped. "I protect what's mine, always, so we have two options. We can pretend for a while until the situation resolves naturally, or we can make this become reality for real." My jaw dropped, and I stared at him with wide eyes. "Are you asking me to pretend to be your wife? Or are you asking me to actually marry you? We've known each other for literally an hour. I'm still deciding which of the two options I prefer," he admitted, with an honesty that should be alarming, but that somehow was refreshing. "It depends a lot on how you feel about me." His fingers touched my chin gently, turning my face, so our eyes met. So tell me, Ayla Morris, what do you feel when you look at me? I pulled my face away from his hand, trying to regain some ability to think clearly, but my voice came out all scrambled. I feel confused because this is absurd and happened way too fast. I feel fascinated because you're different from anyone I've ever met. I feel irritated because you're arrogant and presumptuous, and act like you've already decided everything. I took a deep breath. And I feel grateful, because you saved me from the worst humiliation of my life, defended me when no one ever did that before, and now you're here offering me protection in a way I didn't even know I needed. The smile that spread across his face was pure masculine victory and satisfaction. Then let me decide for you for now, he suggested with that irritating confidence. Tomorrow I'll pick you up for lunch. We'll talk for real, get to know each other without masks or performances, and see where this can go. He leaned back, but kept his hand possessively on my knee. No lies, no games, just brutal honesty about who I am and what I want. I should say no, should demand he drop me off at home and never appear in my life again. But the words that came out of my mouth were completely different. Okay, lunch tomorrow, but no more shocking surprises like calling me your wife in front of crowds. I'm not promising anything, he responded with that dangerous smile that made my stomach flip. I have a tendency to be unpredictable when it comes to protecting what's mine, and you, my love, officially became mine from the moment I put my arm around your waist. Kyle knocked on the divider window and shouted from the front seat, "Boss, what's the address?" I gave my address with my voice still shaking slightly, and as the limousine started moving through the streets of New York, I wondered what kind of absolutely insane craziness I had just gotten myself into. Matteo Cipriani was dangerous in every possible way, not just because of the power and obvious connection to the organized crime world, but because of the way he made me feel things too intense, too fast. And the scariest part? I didn't want to get out of this craziness, even knowing I should run in the opposite direction as fast as possible. The trip to my apartment passed in a blur of casual conversations about nothing important, but loaded with an underlying tension that made the air inside the limousine feel electrically charged. When we finally stopped in front of my modest building, that brutally contrasted with the luxury Matteo was clearly accustomed to, he got out first and offered his hand to help me down. "Tomorrow at noon," he said, keeping my hand trapped in his longer than necessary. "I'll pick you up here, and we'll go to a quiet place where we can talk without interruptions." "Noon," I repeated, feeling nervous butterflies in my stomach. He brought my hand to his lips once more, and the lingering kiss he left there was warm and promising of things I couldn't even name. "Until tomorrow, Mia Mowgli, I'm still not your wife," I protested weakly. The smile he gave me was pure masculine certainty. "Not yet, amore, but you will be, sooner than you think." And then he got back into the limousine, and I stood there on the empty sidewalk, watching the car disappear into the night, with my heart beating erratically, and my mind spinning in crazy circles. What the hell had just happened to my life? Chapter 3. Kitty finds out and investigates. I had barely managed to sleep 3 hours when the sound of my apartment door opening made me jump out of bed with my heart racing, but the familiar voice that shouted next made all the fear transform into something between relief and renewed panic. Kitty had a key to my apartment for emergencies, and apparently she considered the current situation a maximum level emergency. "Girl, what the hell happened last night?" Her voice echoed through the small apartment as she marched straight to my bedroom, waving her phone in my direction like it was a weapon. "I saw the news, articles, photos. Matteo Cipriani appears at charity gala with mysterious wife, and there's a photo of you, Ayla. Your photo is literally on every elite gossip site in the city." I was sitting on the bed, still in my pajamas, with my hair completely messy and my eyes swollen from crying so much, and processing the craziness of the previous night. "I know, Kit. I know, and I'm still trying to understand how my life turned upside down in a matter of hours." Kitty threw herself on the bed beside me with all the energy of someone who had just finished a night shift, but was running on pure adrenaline and curiosity. "Tell me everything, from the beginning. And don't skip any details, because I need to understand how you went from humiliated by those snakes to married to the most powerful and dangerous man in New York." So I told her everything, from the brutal humiliation by my colleagues led by Mabel, through Matteo's cinematic appearance, his shocking declaration calling me his wife, the dance on the floor with everyone watching, to the luxurious limousine and the promise of lunch today. Kitty listened to me in absolute silence, which was rare for her, and her eyes got wider and wider as the story progressed. "Wait, let me see if I got this right," she said when I finished, raising her hands as if organizing the facts in her head. "Matteo Cipriani, the Italian Mafia billionaire, just appeared out of nowhere, called you his wife in front of hundreds of people, publicly humiliated those vipers who were attacking you, took you to dance, and then brought you home in a limousine saying he wants to see you again today. That basically sums it all up perfectly," I confirmed, running my hands over my tired face. "And the most insane part? He said he saw me before, Kit, 3 weeks ago, at that cafe near work, when I helped that elderly lady with her bags. Kitty was silent for a few seconds, processing that information, and then her whole face melted into that romantic expression she always made when watching dramatic movies. Ayla, this is literally the most romantic and dark thing I've ever heard in my life. He saw you doing a genuine act of kindness, was fascinated, and when he saw you being humiliated, he simply couldn't not intervene. She held my hands tightly. This is book plot material, girl. This is complete craziness. I shot back, pulling my hands back. And he wants to have lunch with me today, to really talk about how we're going to make this work. Make what work exactly? We don't even really know each other. Kitty looked at me with that serious nurse expression used to giving difficult news to patients. You are going to this lunch, Ayla Morris. It's not even up for debate. But he's dangerous, Kit, I practically shouted, getting up from the bed and starting to pace back and forth. Rich, powerful, and everyone knows Matteo Cipriani is involved with the Italian Mafia. This isn't romance. This is real danger. Kitty got really serious then, and I saw genuine concern cross her face. I know that perfectly well, and yes, this worries me much more than you think. She got up too, and grabbed my shoulders, forcing me to stop pacing. But Ayla, think with me. He protected you yesterday, defended you publicly. If he wanted to hurt you or use you in some bad way, he wouldn't have done that like that. She took a deep breath. He clearly wants you, and in his world, when someone like Matteo Cipriani wants something, he goes after it with everything. I felt tears start to sting my eyes again. What if this is too dangerous? What if I get into something I can't get out of? Then I'll investigate everything about him, Kitty promised with that fierce determination that made her the best friend anyone could have. I'll use my contacts. I'll research. I'll find out if he's a real threat to you. And if I find out he's dangerous in a way that could hurt you, I'll get you out of this situation, even if I have to drag you by your hair. She smiled slightly. But for now, you're going to this lunch. You're going to really talk to him, and you're going to find out who he really is beneath all that intimidation and power. I hugged my best friend tightly, feeling gratitude flood through me. Thank you for always protecting me, even when I get myself into the worst possible situations. I'll always protect you, silly, she murmured, hugging me back. Now come on, we have less than 3 hours to make you look stunning for this lunch, and I'm not letting you show up wearing anything less than perfect. The next few hours passed in a blur of Kitty practically raiding my limited wardrobe, choosing a light blue dress she swore would make Matteo fall to his knees, helping me with makeup and hair until I actually looked presentable. When I was finally ready and looked in the mirror, I barely recognized the woman staring back at me, elegant and beautiful, in a way that made my heart beat faster with pure anxiety. Exactly at noon, my intercom buzzed, and when I answered, Matteo's deep, husky voice did something strange to my ability to breathe normally. Amore, I'm down here waiting for you. Kitty practically pushed me out of the apartment with a kiss on the cheek and a fierce whisper of, go find out the truth about him. When I got downstairs and walked through the door, Matteo was standing there next to that same black limousine from the night before, wearing dark pants and a white shirt that probably cost more than my rent, with sunglasses hiding those intense eyes. But when he saw me, the glasses slid down his nose and the look he gave me was so loaded with masculine appreciation that I felt my entire skin heat up. You look absolutely beautiful, Mia Bella, he said, taking my hand and kissing my fingers delicately. That blue should be illegal because it only makes you even more irresistible. I got into the limousine trying to control the blush that was surely coloring my cheeks, and when Matteo settled beside me, he kept a respectful distance that somehow left me both relieved and disappointed at the same time. The trip was surprisingly quiet, with him just holding my hand casually, as if it were the most natural thing in the world, and me watching the city pass by the window trying to calm my nerves. When we finally stopped in front of a charming Italian restaurant in the heart of Manhattan, I didn't think much of it until we got out and realized the place was completely empty. Where is everyone? I asked, looking around confused. Is the restaurant closed? Matteo guided my hand inside while Kyle stayed outside standing guard, and only when we were completely alone inside did he answer. I rented the entire restaurant for us, Amore. Complete privacy to talk without interruptions or curious looks. He pulled out a chair for me with old-fashioned gentleness. Sit, please. I sat down, still processing that information. You rented an entire restaurant? Just for lunch? Yes, and I'd do it again without thinking twice, he answered, sitting across from me and watching me with that intensity that made my stomach flip. Problem? No, just excessively extravagant, I murmured, picking up the menu but not really able to focus on the written words. The smile that curved his lips was small but genuine. Get used to it, Ayla, because I don't do absolutely anything halfway when it comes to things or people who matter to me. He paused and leaned slightly forward. And you? How did you sleep after all that craziness yesterday? I laughed without any humor. Badly, very badly, because literally everyone is talking about us. Articles on gossip sites. Photos someone took at the gala, headlines about Matteo Cipriani's secret wife. My phone hasn't stopped ringing once since I woke up. Then turn it off completely, Matteo suggested with that irritating simplicity of someone who always has a solution for everything. Or better yet, change your number. I'll give you a new one, private, that only people who are really important in your life will have access to. I stared at him incredulously. How do you solve literally everything so easily? It's like nothing is really a problem for you. Money buys solutions, power opens doors, and influence makes problems disappear, he answered with brutal honesty. But Ayla, about last night and everything that happened. He held my hand across the table, his large, warm fingers completely enveloping mine. I don't regret anything I did, but I owe you a complete and honest explanation about who I really am and what I do. My heart raced, because this was the moment of truth. You're Matteo Cipriani, billionaire, owner of hotels and casinos, and I lowered my voice to a whisper, even though we were completely alone, involved with the Italian Mafia. Am I right? The expression of genuine surprise that crossed his face was almost comical. You researched me. Kitty researched, I corrected quickly. My best friend, the nurse I told you about yesterday. She's super protective and wanted to know exactly who I was getting involved with. She's smart and a good friend, Matteo agreed, nodding with approval. And yes, you're absolutely right. I'm the Don of the Cipriani family, third generation. I have legal businesses like luxury hotels, casinos in Vegas and Atlantic City, real estate investments, and I also have illegal businesses that I won't detail now, but that you need to know exist. He looked me in the eyes without looking away. But I have a code of honor, Ayla. I don't hurt innocents. I don't get involved with human trafficking. I don't do anything that goes against the principles my father taught me before he died. I took a deep breath, trying to process all of that. And why me? Of all the women you could have chosen, why did you decide to help me like that? The vulnerability that appeared in his eyes was so unexpected and rare, it took my breath away. Because you reminded me that genuine kindness still exists in the world, something I had completely lost sight of. His voice got lower, more intimate. In my world, Ayla, absolutely everything is calculated transaction. Strategic lies, people using others for their own gain. But you in that cafe, helping a lady who wouldn't give you anything in return, you were genuine in a way I hadn't seen in years. He squeezed my hand. And when I saw you yesterday being attacked by those venomous snakes just for being exactly who you are, humble, real, authentic, I simply couldn't not intervene and protect you. Matteo, my voice came out choked with emotion. I know it's too fast, too intense, and probably scary, he continued without giving me a chance to interrupt. But I don't lie about what I feel. I never have, and I'm not going to start now. And I feel a lot for you, Ayla. Much more than I should feel for someone I met just one day ago. But we barely really know each other, I protested, even feeling my heart melt with each word of his. Then let's get to know each other now. For real, he proposed with that determination that seemed to be part of his essence. Ask me whatever you want about me, anything, and I'll answer with complete honesty. No lies, no evasions, just the truth. Chapter 4, Getting to Know Each Other, and Mabel Tries to Redeem Herself. I took a deep breath, trying to gather courage to ask the questions that needed to be asked. The questions Kitty would definitely grill me about later. Have you ever killed anyone? The question came out more direct than I intended, but there was no gentle way to ask something like that. Matteo didn't look away for even a second, and the brutal honesty in his answer was so raw it made me swallow hard. Yes, I have. Self-defense. Protecting my family, situations where it was kill or be killed, but never innocence, Ayla. Never people who weren't involved in my world. Never for pleasure or gratuitous cruelty. He squeezed my hand lightly. I know this should scare you and make you run in the opposite direction, but I promised honesty and I won't lie about who I am. My heart was beating too fast, but I continued because I needed to know everything. Do you have a girlfriend? A real wife hidden somewhere? No. The answer came immediate and firm. Never married, never had a serious relationship that lasted more than a few months. Never wanted any of that, because in my world, relationships are dangerous complications. He paused, and that vulnerability appeared in his eyes again, until you showed up in my life in a completely unexpected way and messed up everything I thought I knew about what I wanted. My face got so hot I was sure I was red as a tomato. You don't know me well enough to want to actually marry me. We literally met yesterday. I know the essentials about you, and the essentials are all that matters in the end. He shot back with that irritating conviction. You're kind in a genuine way that's rare to find, strong enough to survive in a toxic work environment without losing your essence, real in a world full of masks and lies, beautiful in a natural way that doesn't need expensive jewelry to shine. He leaned forward. You're smart and observant. sarcastic when you're nervous as a defense mechanism. And most important of all, you make me feel things I haven't felt in years, Ayla. You make me want to be better, want to protect, want to have something real for the first time in my adult life. Tears started to sting my eyes, because no one had ever seen me that way before. No one had ever described me with such precision and care. This is too intense, Mateo. All of this is too much. I know I'm a lot. I always have been, he agreed with a small smile. But now it's your turn to ask whatever you want about me. Anything. No filters. I wiped away the tears that threatened to fall and thought about what I really wanted to know. Why are you so confident in everything? So arrogant sometimes? Where does this absolute certainty that you're always right come from? The laugh that escaped him was surprisingly genuine and without that dangerous edge. Because I built an empire practically alone since I was 20 years old, amore. My father died suddenly. I inherited the Cipriani family when I was still practically a kid, and everyone expected me to fail miserably. His eyes darkened with old memories. Uncles wanted to take my place. Rivals thought it was the perfect time to attack, and I had to learn to be strong and decisive faster than anyone should. I didn't just survive. I dominated, expanded the business, earned respect through strength and intelligence, and now no one questions my authority. He shrugged. Confidence comes from having survived the worst and won when everyone bet against me. I nodded, processing that information, and feeling something tighten in my chest for the younger version of him who had to grow up too fast. And loneliness? Are you lonely underneath all this power and confidence? Mateo was silent for several long seconds, and the vulnerability that took over his expression was so raw and honest. It made me want to cross the table and hug him. Yes, very lonely actually, he admitted quietly. My world doesn't have room for real and genuine connections, Ayla. Everything is business. Calculated transaction, people wanting something from me or using me for their own gain. Even my friendships are based on bought loyalty or fear of what I can do. He held my hand tighter. But you're literally the only thing that isn't business in my life. The only person I want around, not for strategy or advantage, but simply because you make me feel less lonely in a way I didn't even know I needed. The tears I was trying to hold back finally started rolling down my face, and I couldn't control the emotion flooding through me anymore. Mateo, I don't know what to say. He got up from his chair and came to my side, kneeling beside me and wiping my tears with his thumbs in a gesture so gentle it completely contrasted with all that dangerous image. Don't cry, my love, not unless they're tears of happiness. I laughed through my crying, a wet and messy sound. I don't even know what I'm feeling. Confused because all this is too fast and too intense. Fascinated because you're different from anyone I've ever met. Scared because your world is dangerous, and I don't know if I can handle it. Everything you're feeling is completely normal and valid, he murmured, still cleaning my face with infinite care. But Ayla, I need you to know something. I'm not going to rush anything. I'm not going to force you into anything you're not ready for. He kissed my forehead softly. We'll take it slow. Really getting to know each other, finding out if this can really work, and we'll see where this takes us without pressure and without impossible expectations. Okay? I nodded, because it was all I could do with my throat tight with emotion. Okay, let's try. The smile that lit up his face was so genuine and happy, it made my heart do a complete flip. He got up and went back to his chair, and the rest of lunch passed in lighter conversations about normal things like favorite foods, movies we liked, places we wanted to visit. It was surprisingly easy to talk to him when we weren't discussing heavy things, and I caught myself genuinely laughing several times at the absurd stories he told about Kyle messing up. When we finally finished eating, and Mateo paid the probably exorbitant bill for having rented the entire restaurant, we went out together to the street where Kyle was waiting patiently beside the limousine. But before we reached the car, a desperate voice made us stop in the middle of the sidewalk. Ayla! Please, I need to talk to you. Mabel practically ran in our direction, her eyes red from crying so much, and her makeup smudged in a way that would have been comical if it weren't so pathetic. Mateo immediately positioned himself in front of me protectively, completely blocking her access. No, the word came out cold and final. Mr. Cipriani, please, Mabel begged with her voice trembling. I didn't know. I swear I had no idea Ayla was your wife. I never, ever would have done that if I knew who she really was. Mateo's expression could freeze hell itself. You humiliated her publicly, deliberately, cruelly, without knowing who she was. And that says exactly who you are, Mabel Laurent. Cruel, envious, fake, and capable of attacking someone just because you can. He took a threatening step toward her. The fact that you didn't know who she was to me only makes everything worse, not better. Mabel was crying openly now, her composure completely destroyed. I'm sorry, Ayla. I'm truly sorry. We were friends, remember? I didn't mean to. Something inside me hardened at those words, and I went around Matteo, placing my hand on his arm to calm him before facing Mabel directly. My voice came out firm and controlled in a way that surprised me. We were never really friends, Mabel. You always pretended, always used our friendship when it was convenient for you, and when you had the chance to publicly destroy me, you didn't hesitate for a second. I took a deep breath. I forgive you, because holding on to anger and resentment is toxic, and I refuse to let you have that power over my life. But I'll never forget what you did, and I'll never trust you again. Now get out of here and don't come near me again. Mabel practically ran away, her sobs echoing down the street, and when I turned back, Matteo was looking at me with an expression of pride so intense it made my stomach flip. You were perfect, absolutely perfect. Strong but kind, firm but without unnecessary cruelty. I learned from pain, and I don't want to repeat other people's mistakes, I murmured, feeling strangely exhausted. And thank you for defending me yesterday and today too. For being here. I'll always defend you, Amore. Always, he promised, kissing my forehead again, in that way that was quickly becoming my favorite gesture. Now come on. Kyle will take you home so you can rest. And tomorrow night, dinner at my penthouse. I want you to see my real world, where I live, who I am when I'm not performing for society. My heart jumped nervously. Your house? Your penthouse? Completely safe and private. Just the two of us and Kyle standing guard, because he's funny, and I think you'll like him, Matteo explained with a smile. No pressure, no expectations, just dinner and conversation. I even cook, believe it or not. I laughed because the image of Matteo Cipriani, Mafia Don, cooking was absurd and adorable at the same time. Okay, dinner at your place tomorrow night. Perfect, he murmured, taking my hand and bringing it to his lips for a long, lingering kiss that made my entire skin tingle. Until tomorrow, Mia Mowgli. I'm still not actually your wife, I protested, even though I was already smiling. The dangerous and promising smile he gave me made my stomach flip. I'll repeat what I said last time. Not yet. Chapter 5. Dinner at the Penthouse and Kyle subplot. The next night came too fast and too slow at the same time, and when I was finally ready for dinner at Matteo's penthouse, my nerves were on edge in a way that made my hands shake as I tried to apply lipstick for the third time. Kitty had helped me choose a dark red dress she swore would make Matteo completely lose his mind, and now as I looked at myself in the mirror, part of me wanted to cancel everything and hide under the covers. You look beautiful, and he's going to love it, Kitty said for the 10th time, while arranging my hair loose over my shoulders. And remember, I investigated everything I could about him in the last 24 hours, and aside from the obvious involvement with illegal activities, he seems to be honest about having a code of honor. No human trafficking, no violence against innocents, nothing indicating he'd be dangerous specifically to you. I took a deep breath, trying to calm my erratically beating heart. But what if this is too fast? What if I'm throwing myself into something I can't control? Then you leave. Simple as that, Kitty responded with that nurse practicality. But Ayla, you deserve to be happy after everything you've been through. Those vipers at work humiliated you for years. You lived in the shadows, feeling inadequate, and now a powerful man appears who really sees you and wants to protect you. She held my shoulders. At least give this a real chance, okay? When the intercom buzzed promptly at 7 o'clock, my stomach tied in a nervous knot, but Kyle's voice instead of Matteo's caught me by surprise. Hi, Ayla. The boss sent me to pick you up because he's finishing dinner and didn't want to burn the food. Come down when you're ready. The image of Matteo Cipriani, dangerous mafia billionaire, worried about not burning the food he was personally cooking, was so absurd and adorable that I genuinely laughed for the first time all day. I went down to find Kyle leaning against the limousine with that easy, friendly smile that was already becoming familiar. The boss is cooking? I asked, getting into the car. Kyle gave that husky laugh as he pulled away. Yeah, and he's nervous in a way I've never seen before. He personally cleaned the entire penthouse yesterday, spent 2 hours choosing wine, tested 3 different carbonara recipes until he decided which one was best. He looked at me through the rearview mirror with amused eyes. In 15 years working for him, I've never seen the boss like this. He's completely lost over you in a way that's even a little scary. My face heated up, and I tried to control the silly smile that insisted on appearing. Has he really never brought anyone to his home before? For business meetings, yes, but for personal, intimate dinner, never, Kyle confirmed, turning onto a street full of luxury buildings. You're literally the first, and that means something very serious in his world. Matteo Cipriani doesn't let people into his private space unless they're extremely important. When the car stopped in front of an elegant, modern skyscraper, Kyle guided me to the private elevator that went straight up to the penthouse on the top floor. My nerves were completely out of control when the doors finally opened, revealing the most luxurious and stunning interior I had ever seen in my life. The space was huge and open, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a breathtaking view of all of New York lit up at night, elegant Italian decor with clearly expensive but comfortable furniture, and an air of sophisticated masculinity that screamed Matteo in every detail. Kyle held the elevator door with a smile. "Welcome to the boss's castle. He's in the kitchen having a mini nervous breakdown, so go save him before he actually burns something." I laughed nervously and walked through the space following the absolutely divine smell of homemade Italian food coming from the large modern kitchen. Matteo had his back turned stirring something on the stove, wearing dark pants and a white shirt, with the sleeves rolled up to his elbows, and his hair was slightly messy as if he'd run his hands through it several times. The scene was so domestic and different from his public image that I stopped just watching for a few seconds. "I heard that, Kyle." His voice came out loud but amused. "And I'm not having any breakdown. I'm just being a perfectionist with the food," Kyle shouted back, already walking away. "Sure, boss, whatever you say. I'll be downstairs standing guard and leave you two alone." Matteo turned then, and when his eyes landed on me, all that anxiety Kyle had mentioned became completely visible in his expression for a fraction of a second, before being replaced by that intense masculine appreciation. He dropped what he was doing and walked to me with those confident steps, his eyes running over every inch of the red dress in a way that made my entire skin tingle. "You look absolutely stunning, amore," he murmured, taking my hand and slowly spinning my body as if admiring me from all angles. "This red should be illegal, because it's doing impossible things to my self-control." I laughed, trying to control the blush that surely colored my cheeks. "And you're really cooking? Kyle said you're nervous." "Kyle talks too much and will have his salary cut tomorrow," Matteo grumbled, but was smiling. "But yes, I'm cooking. My Italian nonna taught me all the family recipes before she died, and I like to cook when I want to impress someone really important." He guided me to the table already set with lit candles, glasses of very expensive wine, and a simple but elegant flower arrangement. "Sit and relax while I finish the last details." I sat down watching him return to the kitchen and work with surprising efficiency, and there was something intensely attractive about seeing him so comfortable and domestic, doing something as normal as cooking. When he finally brought the plates and sat across from me, the smell of the homemade carbonara was so good, my stomach growled embarrassingly loud. "Eat before it gets cold," he instructed, pouring wine into both glasses. I picked up my fork and tried the first bite, and the flavor that exploded in my mouth was so absurdly perfect, I moaned without being able to control it. "Oh my God, this is divine. You really made this?" The pride that lit up his face was genuine and almost childlike in its purity. "Yes, secret family recipe that passes from generation to generation." "You really like it?" "Like is an understatement. This is among the best things I've ever eaten in my life," I answered, taking another forkful immediately. "You have hidden talents no one would imagine." The smile that curved his lips gained that dangerous and suggestive edge. "I have several hidden talents, my love, and I can't wait to show you all of them." My face went as red as the dress I was wearing. "Behave, Matteo." "Impossible when you're near wearing that dress and making sounds like that when you taste my food," he shot back with that sharp humor that was already becoming familiar. Dinner passed in easy, natural conversations that flowed effortlessly, and I found myself completely relaxing for the first time since all this craziness had started. Matteo was surprisingly funny when he wanted to be, with a dry, intelligent sense of humor that made me genuinely laugh, and there was a kindness beneath all that dangerous intensity that left me increasingly fascinated. "Do you have siblings?" I asked between bites. His expression softened in a way I hadn't seen yet. "I have a younger sister, Julia. She lives in Italy, is married to a good man who treats her like a queen, and has 2 beautiful kids I shamelessly spoil whenever I can." His smile became protective. "I kept her away from this world from the start, away from the violence and danger, and she lives a completely normal and safe life." "You protect her," I observed, feeling something tighten in my chest at the obvious tenderness in his voice. "Always protected, and always will protect," he confirmed. "Just like I protect you now, Ayla. Anyone who matters to me is under my permanent protection, and nothing and no one will hurt who I love." The casual way he said "who I love" made my heart skip several beats, but I tried to maintain my composure. "And you? Your family?" The pain that crossed his face was quick but intense. "My parents died 5 years ago in a car accident. It was quick at least, they didn't suffer." I held his hand across the table without thinking. "Now I only have Kitty, who is my chosen family, my sister of the heart who supports me in absolutely everything. Matteo turned his hand and intertwined our fingers with comforting firmness. She loves you very much. I noticed in the way you talk about her with so much affection. He paused. I want to meet her officially, Ayla. I want her to assess me personally and see that my intentions with you are completely serious. My heart melted completely at those words. You want to really meet Kitty? Yes, because she's clearly the most important person in your life, and everything that's important to you automatically becomes important to me too, he answered with a simplicity that made tears sting my eyes. I want to meet the people you love. I want to be part of your life for real, not just keep you separate in my world. I blinked the tears away, because crying in the middle of dinner would be ridiculous. You say things that make me feel. I stopped not knowing how to finish. Feel what? He leaned forward with that total intensity focused on me. Feel seen. Valued. Important, I admitted quietly. Feel like I really matter to someone for the first time in a long time. Matteo got up from his chair and came to my side, kneeling beside my chair and holding my face between his large, warm hands, with a delicacy that contrasted with all that strength. You matter more than you can imagine, my love. More than anyone has mattered to me in years. He caressed my cheek with his thumb, and I'm going to spend as much time as necessary proving it to you every day until you completely believe it. My heart was beating so hard I was sure he could hear it, and when he leaned closer, his warm breath brushing my lips, I completely forgot how to breathe. Ayla, he murmured with that husky voice that did impossible things to me. Can I kiss you? For real this time, without an audience, without performance, just the two of us, and what we feel for each other. My yes came out so low it was almost inaudible, but it was enough for him. The kiss started soft and careful, as if he were giving me time to pull back if I wanted. But when my lips parted under his in silent invitation, all that restraint melted completely. He deepened the kiss with an intensity that stole all the air from my lungs, one hand holding my nape firmly while the other squeezed my waist, pulling me closer, and I responded with a surrender that would have scared me if I were thinking clearly. But I wasn't thinking about absolutely anything except how his lips fit perfectly with mine. How his taste was addictive in a way that made me want more and more. How his body was hard and warm against mine in a way that made my entire skin tingle with desire. My fingers buried themselves in his hair, completely messing it up. And the low groan that escaped from his throat in response made something in my stomach contract violently. When we finally separated because breathing had become absolutely necessary, we were both panting, and I was sure my lipstick had completely disappeared. Matteo rested his forehead against mine, his dark eyes burning with an intensity that made my whole body tremble. You drive me completely crazy, amore, he murmured with his voice husky and loaded with barely contained desire. Completely lost in a way I've never been before. On the other side of the penthouse, near the elevator door where he was supposedly standing guard, Kyle whispered to himself with a huge smile. The boss finally gave in for real. Chapter 6. Kitty meets Matteo and approval. The next morning arrived accompanied by a message from Matteo that made my heart race before I was even fully awake. Good morning, my love. Breakfast with me and your friend Kitty today? I want to meet her officially. I'll pick you up at 10. It wasn't exactly a request. It was more a declaration of intent, but something in my chest warmed at the fact he wanted to meet the most important person in my life in such a direct and honest way. I called Kitty immediately because I knew she was getting off her shift and probably still awake from work adrenaline. Matteo wants to meet you officially. Breakfast today at 10. Can you? The high-pitched scream she let out on the other end of the line almost burst my eardrum. Can I? Girl, I will, even if I have to miss my next shift. This man wants to meet the best friend. This is serious in a way I need to see personally. There was a pause, and then her voice got more serious and protective. And I need to assess him face to face, see if his intentions are really good, or if he's using you somehow. 2 hours later, we were sitting in a charming cafe in the center of Manhattan, and I watched nervously while Kitty studied Matteo with that analytical intensity she used when evaluating patients at the hospital. He had arrived punctually, dressed casually, but still absurdly elegant in dark pants and a gray shirt that highlighted every muscle in his chest, and had greeted Kitty with genuine respect that clearly caught her by surprise. Kitty leaned forward after a few minutes of superficial conversation about the weather and the quality of the coffee, and her expression was pure protective determination. So, Matteo Cipriani, you're the guy who called my best friend his wife in front of hundreds of people at a charity gala without any kind of prior warning or context. Mateo didn't back down even a millimeter at the accusatory tone, and actually seemed to respect her directness. Yes, exactly that. And I'd do it again, without hesitating a second if the situation repeated itself, because she was being humiliated in a cruel and public way, and I simply don't tolerate that kind of behavior. And now? Kitty crossed her arms, maintaining that penetrating stare. What are your real intentions with her? Because if this is some kind of game or power play, I swear you'll regret it regardless of how much money or influence you have. The seriousness that took over Mateo's expression was so intense, even I felt the weight of it. It's not a game at all, and my intentions are as serious as possible. I want her, Kitty, for real. And forever if she'll have me. He looked directly into her eyes without looking away. I know it's too fast. I know it seems like complete craziness, but my world doesn't work with normal slowness. When I feel something, when I want something, I act with everything I have. His eyes turned to me for a moment, and the heat in them made my stomach flip. And I feel a lot for her, more than I've felt for anyone in years. Kitty kept her gaze fixed on him for a few more long seconds before turning to me. And you, Ayla, how do you really feel about all this? About him? I took a deep breath, knowing I needed to be completely honest. Not just with her, but with myself. I feel scared because all this happened too fast and too intense for me to process properly. I feel fascinated because he's different from anyone I've ever met, and there's something about him that pulls me in a way I can't logically explain. My hands were trembling slightly, and I held them together in my lap. I feel confused because I know his world is dangerous and complicated in ways I can barely comprehend. But above all that, Kitty, I feel happy for the first time in years. He makes me feel truly seen, protected in a way I've never experienced, valued as if I really mattered to someone. The silence that followed was loaded with emotion, and I saw Kitty's eyes get slightly wet before she blinked the tears away and sighed heavily. Okay, approved for now, she declared, looking back at Mateo with that protective expression still present. But if you hurt her in any way, Matteo Cipriani, I have nurse friends who know exactly where everything hurts in the human body. Understood perfectly? The smile that curved Mateo's lips was genuine and full of respect. Understood with total clarity, and I promise I'll never intentionally hurt her. I protect what's mine. Always, and she's now under my permanent protection. Kitty nodded, satisfied, and then her expression changed to something lighter and even slightly playful. Now that the serious formalities are over, I have a completely different question. She took a sip of coffee, trying to seem casual but failing miserably. Kyle, your capo and right-hand man that I briefly saw when you picked up Ayla, is he single by any chance? I almost spit out the coffee I was drinking and felt my face heat up with pure embarrassment. Kitty, you can't be serious right now. What? She defended herself with that mischievous smile. He's extremely hot, has that sarcastic humor I love, and seems nice. I'm just asking an innocent question. Mateo was clearly enjoying this entire interaction, and the low laugh that escaped him was genuine and warm. Yes, Kyle is single, and has been for quite a while actually, and you're absolutely right about him being funny. He's one of the few people in my circle who can make me really laugh. He took his phone from his pocket with that characteristic efficiency. Want me to arrange a date for you two? I can send a message right now if you're interested. Kitty perked up completely, her eyes shining in a way I hadn't seen in months. Seriously, you'd do that? Like, maybe? Mateo was already typing before she even finished the sentence, his fingers flying across the phone screen with impressive speed. Done. Sent it. Told him my Ayla's best friend wants to get to know him better and that he should call you today if he's interested. He looked up with that small smile. And knowing Kyle, he'll call in less than an hour because he's efficient when it comes to beautiful and interesting women. You're absurdly efficient at solving things, Kitty observed, clearly impressed. Like, scarily efficient, actually. I've always been like this, especially when it involves people who are important to— He made a deliberate pause and looked directly at me with that intensity that made my breathing fail. My future wife. Kitty watched that entire exchange with a growing smile and then leaned in to whisper in my ear loud enough for Mateo to hear perfectly. Girl, you're completely gone for him and you're not even trying to hide it anymore. I know, I admitted quietly, because there was no point denying the obvious anymore. Completely gone in a way that should scare me, but actually makes me feel more alive than ever. The rest of breakfast passed in lighter, more natural conversations, with Kitty telling embarrassing stories from my college days that made me want to sink into my chair, and Mateo retaliating with equally embarrassing stories about Kyle messing up during important missions. The chemistry between the three of us flowed in a surprisingly easy way, and I could see Kitty gradually relaxing and starting to really like Mateo beneath all that protective layer. When it was finally time to leave because Kitty needed to sleep after her night shift, she hugged Mateo tightly and whispered something in his ear that I couldn't hear completely, but that made him nod seriously. Then she hugged me tight and whispered in my ear with an emotional voice, "He's good for you, girl. I really approve now. But any problem, Anything. You call me immediately. Always, I promised, kissing her cheek. Now go sleep, because you're falling over. Mateo insisted on paying the entire bill despite Kitty's protests. And when she finally got into a taxi, still yawning, he turned to me with that soft smile. She loves you very much and is extremely protective. I respect that completely. She's the only real family I have, I explained as we walked hand in hand down the sidewalk with no specific destination. And the fact that you wanted to officially meet her and get her approval means a lot to me. He stopped in the middle of the sidewalk and pulled me closer, his hands holding my face with that delicacy that always surprised me coming from someone so dangerous. Everything that's important to you automatically becomes important to me, Ayla. Your people, your dreams, your happiness and sadness, all of that is now part of my life too. He kissed my forehead in that way that was quickly becoming my favorite gesture, and I'm going to prove it to you every day until you completely believe it. My phone vibrated at that moment with a message from Kitty that said only, "Kyle called already, and we're having coffee tomorrow. Thank you!" followed by approximately 15 heart emojis, and I showed the screen to Mateo laughing. "See? I told you he was efficient," Mateo commented with obvious satisfaction. "And now your best friend is going out with my best friend, which means we're officially intertwining our lives in every possible way. Did you plan this?" I asked with growing suspicion. The innocent smile he tried to make was completely fake and absurdly adorable. "I would never plan something as manipulative as getting our best friends together to keep us more connected." "Liar," I accused without any real heat in my voice. "Completely," he admitted, laughing and pulling me into a kiss that was long and sweet and perfect in the middle of that busy New York sidewalk. "But you love me anyway, so it doesn't matter." And the scariest part? He was right. Terribly right. Chapter 7. Jean grovels and Mateo threatens. Going back to work the following Monday was one of the most surreal things I'd ever experienced in my life, because absolutely everything had changed since the charity gala, even though the office physically remained exactly the same. People looked at me differently now, with a mixture of curiosity and forced respect that didn't exist before, and there were constant whispers that stopped abruptly whenever I passed too close. I was putting my things away at my desk and trying to mentally prepare for another day in that toxic environment, when Jean appeared at my side with a smile so fake and exaggerated it bordered on comical. The change in his attitude was so drastic and obvious it was almost offensive in its lack of subtlety. "Ayla, how wonderful to see you back." His voice came out too animated, too enthusiastic, completely different from the condescending and critical tone he always used with me. "I heard the news. You and Matteo Cipriani. How incredible, how absolutely fantastic. Why didn't you ever tell us about this relationship before?" I turned slowly to face him, keeping my expression completely neutral and cold, because my personal life is exactly that, Jean. Personal and private. And you never showed real interest in knowing me as a person. You just constantly criticized my appearance and my clothes. His smile faltered for a fraction of a second, before recomposing itself with visible effort. "Ah, that was a complete misunderstanding. I just wanted you to stand out professionally, to show your best side." He moved closer, lowering his voice to a conspiratorial tone. "But now, with your new and impressive connections, maybe you could help the company in ways that would benefit all of us." Something cold and hard settled in my chest when I realized exactly where this conversation was going. Help the company, how exactly? Well, thinking strategically, you could introduce Matteo Cipriani to our main clients. He has absolutely incredible contacts, influence in circles we've never been able to penetrate. His eyes gleamed with obvious greed. Imagine the doors that could open for us, the business opportunities, the contracts. And naturally, this would be extremely beneficial for your career too, Ayla. Promotion, salary raise, everything you deserve. Anger started boiling in my stomach, hot and sharp. You want me to use my personal relationship to benefit you and the company? You want me to turn the person I love into a networking tool for your professional gain? It's not using, Ayla. It's being smart, strategic. He was sweating slightly now. Think about it. This could give you everything you've always wanted here. I was opening my mouth to say exactly what I thought about that disgusting proposal when a dominant presence filled the space behind me, and the air in the entire office changed instantly. I didn't need to turn around to know who it was, because my whole body reacted with that familiar electric shiver. "Give what exactly to her?" Matteo's voice cut through the air like a sharp blade, cold and dangerous in a way that made Jean literally step back 2 paces. The entire office froze in place, conversations dying mid-sentence, fingers stopping typing on keyboards. and I felt every head turn in our direction. Mateo was standing right behind me wearing a dark gray suit that probably cost more than half the people there made in a year, and his presence was so intense it practically sucked all the oxygen from the environment. Jean was completely pale now, his eyes wide with pure panic. Mr. Cipriani, what an absolutely unexpected surprise. I didn't know you'd be visiting our humble office today. Mateo ignored him completely, as if he were less important than a piece of furniture, and his eyes fixed on me with that warmth that always made my stomach flip. Amore, you forgot our lunch date, he said, with a soft voice that completely contrasted with the tension radiating from him. So I brought Italian food for us. He extended a clearly expensive paper bag from a restaurant I knew charged fortunes per plate. My heart melted completely at the gesture, and I accepted the bag, trying to control the silly smile that insisted on appearing. Thank you, I really had forgotten. Only then did Mateo deign to look at Jean, and the change in his expression was so drastic it was almost violent. All that softness disappeared, replaced by something cold and lethal. And you're her boss, correct? Yes, sir. Jean Dubois, marketing manager at Laurent Inc. It's an immense honor to finally meet you personally. Jean was practically bowing, and I felt nauseous at the pathetic groveling. I'm a huge admirer of your work, and you criticized her, Mateo interrupted with a cutting voice. At the charity gala, you looked at her outfit with visible disdain and said you expected more effort, that her appearance was giving a bad impression of the company. He took a step forward and Jean backed up even more. And now, just a few days after finding out who she is to me, you're trying to use her connection for your own professional benefit. The silence in the office was so absolute I could hear my own breathing. Jean was visibly trembling, sweat running down his forehead. It wasn't exactly like that. It was misinterpreted. Mateo moved even closer, dominant and intimidating in a way that made several people around audibly swallow. Let me be extremely clear about something, Jean Dubois. Ayla works here because she wants to work, not because she needs to. If she decides to leave tomorrow, I'll open an entire company just for her to run. I'll give her the resources she needs. The contacts, everything. His voice dropped to something even more dangerous. And if I hear you treated her badly one single time more, if I find out you're trying to use her in any way, I'll buy this entire company just for the pleasure of firing you on the first day as owner. Understood perfectly? Jean was practically having a breakdown. Ooh, understood. Completely understood. This will never happen again. I promise. Great. Mateo nodded once, and then turned to me with all that coldness melting into affection. Come, amore. Let's have lunch in the park, away from this suffocating place. I grabbed my purse, still half in shock at everything that had just happened, and as we passed through the office toward the exit, I could feel all eyes glued to us. In the empty elevator corridor, I finally managed to minimally process the situation. You didn't need to do that, I murmured, even feeling immense gratitude for what he'd done. Mateo stopped walking and turned me to face him, his hands holding my shoulders firmly. I did need to. Completely. No one treats you that way while I'm breathing, Ayla. No one belittles you, uses you, or makes you feel less than the incredible woman you are. His eyes burned with that intensity. And if you really want to leave this toxic place, if working here is making you unhappy, I'll solve it today. Not tomorrow, not next week, today. Tears stung my eyes because no one had ever defended me that way before. I'll think about leaving. I promise to seriously consider it. But thank you, Mateo, for being here, for protecting me, for simply caring. He wiped the tear that escaped with his thumb, and then pulled me into a tight hug right there in the hallway. I'll always care, always protect. You're mine now, and I take extremely good care of what's mine. And wrapped in his arms, feeling his heart beat firmly against my ear, I finally completely believed those words. Chapter 8. Rival Threat and Extreme Protection. A week had passed since the incident at the office, and I was starting to get used to the new dynamic of my life when everything changed again in a way I wasn't prepared to face. I was at Mateo's apartment for the third time that week, keeping him company while he worked on some documents, when Kyle entered the room with a tense expression that immediately put all my senses on maximum alert. Mateo looked up from the papers, and something in his posture changed instantly, becoming rigid and dangerous in a way I rarely saw. What happened? Kyle cast a quick glance at me before answering, clearly hesitant to speak in front of me. Boss, we need to talk privately about a delicate matter. Speak in front of her, Mateo ordered with a firm voice. Whatever it is, Ayla needs to know too if it involves our security. Kyle's expression got even more serious as he held up his phone. The Rossi family found out about Ayla. They sent a very clear and direct message saying your wife is vulnerable, and it would be a shame if something happened to her. The silence that followed was so dense, I felt difficulty breathing, and I watched Mateo become completely still, in a way that was more frightening than any explosion of rage could be. The fury emanating from him was cold and controlled, the kind of anger that promised terrible consequences for whoever had made the mistake of threatening what was his. When? The word came out sharp as broken glass. 20 minutes ago. Anonymous message, but we know it's them from the specific language used. Kyle responded, keeping his voice professional despite the obvious tension. They're trying to get to you through her, boss. Mateo stood up with controlled and precise movements, grabbing his phone and dialing a number without taking his eyes off me. Kyle, I want maximum security on Ayla immediately. She doesn't leave anywhere without at least 2 armed guards around her 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. He spoke on the phone quickly in Italian, his voice hard and full of commands I couldn't fully understand. Panic started growing in my chest as the reality of the situation set in. Mateo, what's happening? Who are the Rossis? He hung up the phone and came to me with quick steps, kneeling in front of me and holding my face between his hands with urgency. The Rossi family is a rival organization trying to gain territory in the city. They found out about you and are using it to try to weaken me or provoke me. His eyes burned with that protective intensity. But you're completely safe, I promise. I'm going to put my best men to protect you, and I'm going to resolve this situation personally. Resolve how? My voice came out trembling with real fear for the first time since I met Mateo. The only way these men understand, he answered with a hard voice. I'll go to them and make it absolutely clear that you're a line they don't cross under any circumstances. I held his wrists tightly as tears started to fall. What if they hurt you? What if you don't come back? His expression softened minimally, and he wiped my tears with his thumbs. I always come back, amore. Always. Especially now that I have you waiting for me. He pulled me into a tight hug. But you need to cooperate with me on this. Accept the guards, accept the security measures, and move into my penthouse today. I pulled away, looking at him with wide eyes. Move into your place? I can't just... You can and you will, he interrupted with that firmness that didn't accept arguments. Because I'm not risking your life for even a second, Ayla. Here you have military-level security, cameras at every angle, Kyle and other men always present. His voice got softer, but no less determined. Please, my love, do this for me. Let me protect you the right way. The tears were falling freely now, and I nodded because the idea of something happening to me and causing him pain was unbearable. Okay, I'll move. But Mateo, you have to promise me something very important. Anything, he answered immediately. Promise you'll come back to me alive and whole after resolving this with the Rossis. Promise you won't do anything stupidly heroic that puts you in unnecessary danger. He pulled me into another kiss, this one desperate and intense in a way that stole all the air from my lungs. When we separated, we were both breathing heavily, and he rested his forehead against mine. I promise I always come back to you. Always. His voice got even lower, almost vulnerable. And Ayla, there's something I need to tell you now because I don't know if I said it before and you need to know. My heart was beating so hard it hurt. What? I love you, he said, looking directly into my eyes with that total intensity. I know it's too early and too fast, but I love you completely, Ayla Morris. You became the most important thing in my life in a matter of weeks, and I can't imagine my existence without you in it anymore. The words came out of me before I could fully process them. I love you too, even though it's insane and happening too fast. I love you, Mateo. The smile that lit up his face was pure happiness mixed with relief. Good. Very good. Because after I resolve this situation with the Rossis, after I eliminate this threat completely, I'm going to ask you something very important, in a very official way. My stomach tied in a nervous and anticipatory knot. Ask what? You'll find out when the time comes, he answered with that mysterious smile. But for now, Kyle will organize your move here while I take care of the Rossis. The next few hours passed in a blur of frantic activity. Kyle coordinated a team that went to my apartment and packed all my things with military efficiency. Kitty showed up in a panic after I called explaining the situation and kept alternating between hugging me and threatening to castrate Mateo if anything happened to me. And Mateo prepared for the confrontation with the Rossis with that lethal calm that was more frightening than any display of nervousness. When he was leaving through the door dressed all in black, and clearly armed in ways I preferred not to think too much about, I ran to him and held him tightly. Come back to me, please. He kissed my forehead, my lips, and then looked at me with that intensity that made my entire world focus on him. I always come back to you, my love. Always. Because you're my reason to fight, my reason to win, my reason to keep breathing. And then he left, and I stood there with Kyle at my side, trying not to go into complete panic while I waited for him to return safe and sound. Chapter 9. Confrontation and Real Proposal. The following hours were the longest and most agonizing of my entire life. I was at Mateo's penthouse surrounded by security and luxurious comfort, but none of it mattered when the only person I wanted nearby was facing dangerous people because of me. Kyle tried to distract me with casual conversation and even offered to watch a movie with me, but I simply couldn't concentrate on anything except the clock advancing terribly slowly. Kitty had called 3 times in the last 2 hours, alternating between calming me down and panicking along with me. And on the last call, she had threatened to come to the penthouse and break in if Mateo didn't return soon. I promised to call the second he appeared, just to prevent her from doing something impulsive that Kyle would have to physically stop. I was pacing back and forth in the giant living room for the 1,000th time when I heard the private elevator arriving at the penthouse floor, and my heart practically stopped before racing at impossible speed. Kyle immediately stood up from his position near the door, his hand instinctively going to his gun, until he relaxed minimally upon recognizing who was arriving. Mateo came through the door and I ran toward him without thinking about anything else, but stopped abruptly when I saw blood staining the sleeve of his black shirt. Panic hit me like a cold wave and I felt my legs almost give out. "You're hurt. There's blood on your shirt." He walked to me with those confident steps despite the obvious injury and pulled me into a tight hug with the arm that wasn't bleeding. "It's just a superficial scratch. Nothing serious or worrying." Rossi backed down completely from the threat. "And you're safe now. Forever." I pulled away enough to inspect his arm, carefully pulling the sleeve up and seeing the cut that definitely needed to be cleaned and bandaged, even though it wasn't as deep as I feared. "Scratch is an understatement. This needs to be disinfected immediately. Come on, sit on the couch while I get the first aid kit." The expression of pure tenderness that took over his face made me pause in the middle of moving away. "You're really worried about me." "Of course I'm worried. You went to face dangerous criminals because of me." My voice came out louder than I intended, loaded with emotion. "You fought for me again, put yourself in danger, and now you're bleeding." He pulled me back closer, both hands now holding my face with that delicacy that always surprised me. "I'll always fight for you, always put myself between you and any danger. It's who I am when it comes to protecting what I love." He kissed my forehead softly. "And now that this threat has been completely neutralized, now that you're truly safe, I'm going to do what I promised I'd do." My heart skipped a confused beat. "Do what?" Instead of answering verbally, Mateo stepped back and then did something that left me completely frozen in place. He knelt right there in the middle of the luxurious living room, his arm still bleeding slightly but completely ignored, and took a small velvet box from the inside pocket of his jacket. My eyes widened so much they hurt, and my breathing simply stopped working. "Mateo?" His name came out as a shocked whisper. He opened the box, revealing the most stunning ring I'd ever seen in my life. A huge diamond surrounded by smaller stones that sparkled even in the soft light of the room, and looked at me with that total intensity that made my entire world focus only on him. "Ayla Morris, I've known you for only a few weeks, but it feels like entire years. You entered my life in a completely unexpected way and changed absolutely everything." His voice was loaded with raw emotion. "You made me feel things I thought I was no longer capable of feeling, made me want to be better, made me love in a way I've never loved before." Tears started rolling down my face without any control as he continued, each word piercing my heart in a good but painful way. "And I'm not pretending anymore, Ayla. That night at the gala when I called you, my wife was desperate improvisation to protect you, but every day since then has only made me want to turn that lie into absolute truth." He took my trembling hand with his. "This isn't social performance. It's not business strategy. It's nothing but real and complete love. So I ask you here and now, truly and forever, will you marry me? Be my wife for real? Legally and eternally?" I was crying so much I could barely see his face through the tears, but the words came out clear and firm even through the sobs. "You're completely crazy, too intense, possessive in ways that should scare me, dangerous in every sense." I knelt in front of him, holding his face between my trembling hands. "And you're absolutely perfect for me in every way that matters. Yes, Mateo, I'll marry you. 1,000 times yes." The smile that lit up his face was pure masculine happiness and relief mixed together, and he took the ring from the box, sliding it onto my finger with hands that trembled slightly for the first time since I'd met him. As soon as the ring was in place, he pulled me into a kiss that was deep, desperate, full of promises and love and intensity that stole all the air from my lungs. I responded with everything I had, my fingers burying themselves in his hair and pulling him closer, and the entire world around us simply ceased to exist. There was only the two of us, kneeling on the floor of his living room, sealing that promise of forever with a kiss that promised everything. On the other side of the room, near the front door, Kyle watched the whole scene with a huge smile and grabbed his phone immediately. "Kitty, he did it. The boss really did it. He's kneeling on the floor with her." She said yes. They're really engaged now. From the other end of the line, I could vaguely hear Kitty's scream of pure joy. "I knew it. I knew he was going to ask. This is perfect. Double wedding, Kyle. We can have a double wedding with them." Kyle's laugh echoed through the room. "Kitty, we're not even officially dating yet. We've had like 3 dates. Completely irrelevant details. She shot back with that characteristic energy. If they can get engaged in weeks, we can too. I pulled away from Matteo, laughing through my tears, hearing that absurd conversation. And he was also laughing in that husky, beautiful way I loved. Our best friends are as crazy as we are. Completely, he agreed, kissing every tear that still fell down my face. But perfect just the same. He looked at the ring on my finger with obvious satisfaction. You're mine now, officially and forever. My fiancé, my future wife, my entire life. And you're mine, I murmured, kissing him again, because I simply couldn't stop. My impossible fiancé, my future husband, my everything. And there in that room, with Kyle still chatting animatedly with Kitty in the background, and the ring weighing deliciously on my finger, I knew with absolute certainty that I had found my forever. Chapter 10: Wedding and Complete Revenge. 3 months passed in a blur of wedding preparations, life changes, and the most intense happiness I'd ever experienced. Matteo had insisted on doing everything the way I deserved, hiring the best planners, choosing the most beautiful Italian church in New York, and ensuring every detail was absolutely perfect. And now there I was, standing at the entrance of the church, wearing a custom Louis Vuitton dress that seemed straight out of a fairy tale, with Kitty at my side as maid of honor, adjusting my veil for the 3rd time, with eyes shining with emotional tears. You look absolutely stunning, girl. Matteo's going to die when he sees you. My heart was beating erratically as the doors opened and the music started to play. And when my eyes found Matteo at the altar wearing an impeccable Armani suit and looking at me as if I were the only person in the entire universe, all the doubts and fears I might have had simply disappeared completely. The ceremony passed like a beautiful dream, with the Cipriani family occupying half the church, and Kitty representing my Hart family in the front row, crying openly. When it came time for the vows, Matteo held my hands with that comforting firmness and looked at me with total intensity. Ayla Morris, I promise you here in front of God and everyone who loves us that I will always protect you, love you completely, and value you every day for the rest of my life. His voice was loaded with raw emotion. You saved me from an empty and lonely existence, gave me purpose beyond business and power, taught me what true love is. Now I'm completely yours, forever. Tears ran freely down my face when it was my turn. Matteo Cipriani, I promise to challenge you when necessary, love you unconditionally, and stand by your side always. My voice trembled but didn't break. You saved me when I needed it most, made me feel seen and valued for the first time in years, gave me courage to be who I really am. I'm yours forever, completely. I now pronounce you husband and wife, the priest announced with a huge smile, and Matteo pulled me into a kiss that was possessive, passionate, and absolutely perfect, while the entire church erupted in applause. At the luxurious reception that followed, Matteo pulled me to a more private corner, away from the crowd for a few minutes, and held my face with that delicacy that always melted me. Remember that night at the gala when I called you my wife even though it was a lie? How could I forget? I laughed through happy tears. Now it's absolute and legal truth. You're my wife for real. Eternally and completely. He kissed my forehead. And about those people who humiliated you that night. Complete revenge, amore. My stomach tied in a curious knot. What did you do? Mabel was fired from Laurent Inc. 2 weeks ago. Her boss blamed her for losing the Cipriani connection and couldn't handle the pressure I discreetly put on. His smile gained that dangerous edge. Jean was also fired when I bought the entire company through a subsidiary, and now the company is yours if you want to run it, or we can close it or sell it. Completely your choice. I stared at him in absolute shock. You bought the entire company just to give me revenge? I bought it because I promise no one humiliates you without consequences. He pulled me closer. They'll never have power over you or anyone again. It's over. I kissed him with everything I had, pouring gratitude and love and admiration into that kiss. You're impossible and perfect. I love you so much it hurts. I love you more, he murmured against my lips. My queen, my salvation, my entire life. The first dance as a married couple was magical, with Matteo holding me close as we spun across the floor, and everyone watched with smiles. You know what's best? He whispered in my ear. What? Everyone's watching again like that night, but this time it's not a lie or performance. It's real. You're my wife officially and forever, and you're my husband finally. I smiled, resting my head on his chest. Who would have thought humiliation would turn into this? On the other side of the floor, Kyle watched everything next to Kitty, who was clearly emotional. Suddenly, he knelt dramatically right there in the middle of the party, making several people turn to look. Kitty, marry me. She stared at him with wide eyes. Kyle, we've been dating for 3 months, and the boss got married in weeks. We're cut from the same cloth. He held her hand with that charming smile. So? Will you? Kitty laughed, shaking her head, but with obvious love in her eyes. Ask me again in 6 months. If you still want to, we'll talk seriously. I'll want to forever, Kyle promised, standing up and pulling her into a kiss that drew applause from people around. Mateo and I watched the scene laughing, and he spun me one more time. Our best friends are as crazy as we are. Completely, I agreed happily. 1 year later, I was lying on the huge couch in the penthouse, with my hand resting on my rounded 5-month pregnant belly when Mateo came home from work and immediately knelt at my side, placing his large hand over mine. How are my loves today? He asked, kissing my belly with infinite tenderness. Good. The baby kicked 3 times today. I ran my fingers through his hair. Boy or girl? What do you think? Stubborn boy like his father or strong girl like her mother, either way. He moved up to kiss my lips softly. Thank you, Ayla, for everything. For choosing me, loving me, staying with me, giving me this family. Thank you, I murmured emotionally, for seeing me, protecting me, loving me, for that night at the gala when you said, "She's my wife," and changed everything. Best improvisation of my life, he agreed, smiling. And now, where's Mabel? Jean, do you know? I shook my head without real interest. I don't know, and I don't care. They're the past, your present, and future.